Is CEO Phong Lee. Phong, the last time, sort of different, not exactly apples to apples, but the last time that you paid down some debt was 2022, correct?
Correct, yeah.
Why this time? Tell us what you saw and what's going on here.
What the hell is going on? Seriously, 1 minute Bitcoin is trading above $125,000. Everyone is talking about institutional adoption. ETFs are breaking records, and Michael Saylor is buying billions. The next minute, Bitcoin is crashing towards $60,000. Strategy is selling Bitcoin. Billionaire Mark Cuban is reducing his Bitcoin exposure. Hedge fund legend Paul Tudor Jones has exited his MSTR position. And Strategy is suddenly raising $1.5 billion through convertible bonds due in 2029. If you're confused, you're not alone. The question investors are asking right now is simple. Has something fundamentally broken, or are we witnessing the 4-year Bitcoin cycle playing out exactly as it always has? Because beneath the panic, the headlines, and the fear spreading across social media, a very different story may be unfolding. Think about what has happened over the past few weeks. Bitcoin didn't simply drift lower. It suffered a brutal decline, shedding tens of thousands of dollars from its peak. Yet, unlike previous corrections, buyers didn't immediately rush in to rescue the price. The bounce everyone expected never came. Why? At first glance, the answer appears obvious. A growing geopolitical conflict pushed oil prices higher. Inflation fears returned. The Federal Reserve tightened financial conditions. Liquidity began drying up across global markets. Suddenly, risk assets everywhere started feeling pressure. But that's only part of the story. The deeper shift is happening inside institutional capital itself. For the first time in Bitcoin's history, Wall Street isn't simply participating in the cycle. Wall Street is driving the cycle. The same spot Bitcoin ETFs that helped fuel one of the most explosive rallies ever seen in crypto are now experiencing significant outflows. Large funds that were aggressively buying months ago are suddenly reducing exposure, rotating capital into the hottest trade on the planet, artificial intelligence. Money that once flowed into Bitcoin is now chasing AI infrastructure, semiconductor stocks, data centers, and the companies powering the next technological revolution. Then came another shock. Rumors spread that Strategy had sold Bitcoin while simultaneously pausing its weekly purchases and focusing on a massive convertible bond offering. Although the actual Bitcoin sale represented only a tiny fraction of its holdings, the symbolism hit the market like a freight train. Investors weren't reacting to the amount sold. They were reacting to what it might mean. Has the most aggressive Bitcoin buyer in history changed its strategy? Or is Strategy simply doing what sophisticated capital always does during periods of volatility, strengthening its balance sheet while everyone else panics? That's where things become interesting. Because while many investors see fear, others see opportunity. Bitcoin's fundamental properties haven't changed. There will still only ever be 21 million coins. Global debt continues expanding. Currency debasement remains a reality. Institutional adoption continues growing despite temporary setbacks. In fact, some analysts argue that what we're witnessing today looks remarkably similar to previous late-stage cycle corrections that convinced investors the bull market was over right before the next major move higher. Of course, history never repeats perfectly. This cycle has a new variable: artificial intelligence. For years, Bitcoin was viewed as a revolutionary technology in isolation. Today, AI and Bitcoin are increasingly converging into the same conversation. As autonomous systems, digital identities, machine-to-machine payments, and decentralized infrastructure evolve, some believe Bitcoin and crypto may become foundational layers of the emerging digital economy. Most investors are focused on today's price action. Very few are paying attention to where technology is heading over the next decade. And that's what makes this moment so fascinating. Maybe Bitcoin is simply experiencing another brutal chapter of the 4-year cycle. Or maybe we're watching the first truly institutional bear market in Bitcoin history. Either way, The next move could reshape how investors think about Bitcoin, AI, and the future of money itself. Listen carefully as Strategy CEO Phong Lei explains what's really happening behind the headlines.
There's two factors. One is we have had about $8 billion of convertible debt on our balance sheet that's senior to our preferred stock. And we're trying to whittle that down over time, which gives more room for our preferred stocks, especially Stretch, to grow. The second factor is we were able to buy it back at 92 cents on the dollar. And in 2022, we bought back a secured loan at 80 cents on the dollar. So if there's an opportunity for us to deploy our capital to buy back debt on the cheap, we will.
And was it 90 cents or whatever it was on the dollar because the price of Bitcoin has come down?
Yeah, it's at 92 cents on the dollar because that particular tranche of convertible notes had a strike price of $660. So it's just priced lower because the price of Bitcoin is down versus when we had issued the convertible debt.
Was it also a thought? Was the thinking also driven by a hope that, I mean, the stock has been not performing very well? A lot of it is because it's tied to the price of Bitcoin, which has come way off its October high of 126,000. But was some of the thinking to sort of send a message to the investor community that we are paying down debt and we are trying different things?
I think it's fair to say, so a couple of things. First, our stock went to a low earlier this year of $120. At the point we did this, it was at 180. So I would say we've seen pretty strong gains this year. Bitcoin went down to 65. It was at 80 when we did this. So for the year, the performance has been pretty strong. But yeah, part of the message to our shareholders and the community is we are a $62 billion, we're a company that holds $62 billion in Bitcoin. We had, at that point in time, $8 billion of debt. We had about $10 billion or $15 billion in preferred. We have a lot of tools to use, and we'll do the right things at the right time to increase Bitcoin per share for our shareholders.
When you look at the price of Bitcoin right now, does that make you nervous? I mean, you guys don't get nervous because you've watched the price fluctuate through many, many years, but it can't be exciting to sit there and realize that it has not punched above 86,000 for a while now, let alone 126,000.
We bought our first Bitcoin at $11,000. We saw in 2021 Bitcoin go up to 64,000. In 2022, it went down to 16,000. That was a 75% drawdown. I was nervous then. Now, I'm not as nervous because if you look at the macro factors that are happening in the world right now, we have a war in the Middle East. We have uncertainty with inflation and what is Kevin Warsh going to do with interest rates. We have a government that is about to likely pass a pretty major crypto legislation in the Clarity Act. Those are the negatives right now that are going to turn around and be positives in the next 6 months, hopefully.
So you see real tailwinds coming.
I see the headwinds turning into tailwinds. And so if a headwind means we're trading at 73,000, but a tailwind means we get to an all-time high, this is an opportunity to buy more Bitcoin.
That is not what Mark Cuban is doing. He just sold his whole stake, and I think some of the thinking behind it was it's not acting like the hedge that he thought it would act like.
Yeah, you know, there are folks out there who are very respectable traders, and what they're going to do is they're going to find the point to buy Bitcoin. 2021, everybody got in, and they made their money, and then they get out and they find the next thing. The next thing right now is AI. Right? And that's perfectly fair and it's perfectly reasonable for Mark Cuban and others to do that. We're in Bitcoin because we think it is an excellent long-term store of value, and it provides, it's digital capital, and it provides hope and opportunity for people. Right? And it's just a different reason to be buying Bitcoin than someone who is going to trade in and out and go to AI, and then 4 years from now go to the next thing.
Of course, you've always had critics. And you had critics on the heels of this news that you were paying down some debt. Peter Schiff of Euro Pacific Capital, who is definitely a Bitcoin bear and has been very vocal about that, had just put out on X saying that Executive Chairman Michael Saylor of MicroStrategy reduced debt but gave up free financing and burned badly needed cash. Now you have under $1 billion in cash on the books. What do you say to that?
What I'd say to that is we created this cash reserve exactly for this moment, right? We created a $2.25 billion cash reserve to deploy it when it made sense. Here we can buy debt at 92 cents on the dollar, that we would do that. And so for us, we're looking at multivariate equations every single hour of the day to decide how best to deploy our capital. And we have tremendous flexibility in doing so. I mean, if anything, we've proven in the last 6 years, we're pretty good capital allocators and we can create value for our shareholders.
Would you resume your Bitcoin purchases once again? I know that you did a couple of weeks ago, I think between May 11th and 17th, you bought a lot of Bitcoin at an average price of $80,985. It's cheaper today.
We bought we bought $1.6 billion worth of Bitcoin in 1 week, in the second week of May. That's more than almost every Bitcoin treasury company has on its balance sheet. It's about the amount of Bitcoin that SpaceX has on their balance sheet. We did that in 1 week. We didn't buy for the next 2 weeks for a variety of reasons, and people are like, you're pausing. Well, I mean, we will continue to buy Bitcoin, and I think it's a pretty good price right now.
Michael Saylor in the past had said, we will never sell Bitcoin, and then he changed his tune. So what should people be waiting for here?
There's a long-term philosophy that we should be aggregating Bitcoin as a company, and I think it's good for most people, right? There may be a week-to-week or a day-to-day decision that we should sell Bitcoin because it's accretive to our shareholders for the long term. And we'll continue to do that. One of the things that we have with our Bitcoin, because of the volatility, is we have unrealized tax losses that we can capitalize on. That would be a reason to do it. What should you expect? We'll likely sell Bitcoin at some point in time, but we will be net increasing our Bitcoin and, more importantly, increasing our Bitcoin per share.
Well, see, the question then becomes, you talk about unrealized. Mm-hmm. Well, you have unrealized losses, paper losses. Yep. In the last quarter. In the first quarter, they swelled to 12.77 billion, driven, of course, by the drop in Bitcoin's price. There are people out there who say this is just fantasy. Who even knows what is driving the price of Bitcoin? And I'm not sure. Can you say what's driving the price of Bitcoin?
Ultimately, Bitcoin is digital capital. It is a better form of stocks, bonds, gold, real estate, other types of capital. It's the digital transformation. And people have to believe that.
Well,
right?
they have to, but they don't have to. I mean, a better form than, let's say, if I bought 3M or Disney, I can see exactly what they are doing every single quarter, what's being created. This is purchases of Bitcoin, and then...
Well, so if you talk about us, let's move off of Bitcoin. What are we? We're digital equity, right? We buy Bitcoin. Bitcoin gains occur on our income statement, right, and our balance sheet. And we take those unrealized gains and we pass them through to our shareholders, right? It's not much different than a REIT, which buys real estate and property, and they make gains on that and they pass it on to their shareholders. And at some point in time, they sell that property, and perhaps at some point in time, we could sell the Bitcoin.
What about selling the software part of your business? Because MicroStrategy, when it was called MicroStrategy, was a software business. Yeah,
I started in our software business. I was telling you earlier, Liz, I started using our software in 2000. So over 26 years ago. We have 1,500 people. We have 3,000 customers. We operate in 25 countries around the world. It's a thriving business most people would like to have. It's worth $2 billion. How it helps Bitcoin is we've got a finance team, I have a legal team, I have an accounting team, tax folks, marketers, who help us do all of these great things that we do around Bitcoin that otherwise would be difficult if we didn't have an operating business behind it.
Phong, always good to discuss this with you. You guys you've got that spine steel, the steel spine when it comes to purchasing and staying with Bitcoin. You're living up to the name strategy.
Thank you, and I'm looking forward to seeing how the next few years play out.
Well, you'll be here well before the next few years. Good to see you.
Thanks, Liz.